Hi, it's Steve. Today we'd like to show you how to change the drum support roller on your dryer. It's a really easy job. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, the first thing we'll need to do is to disconnect power to the dryer. So either pull it forward enough that you can unplug it, or locate the electrical panel, turn off the appropriate breaker, or remove the appropriate fuses. Once we've done that, we can start the repair. Now that we've disconnected the power, our next step will be to raise the main top. And it's secured to the front panel with a couple of clips that sit in from each edge. So take a thin putty knife and just feel your way until you find that metal spring clip. There's also a metal stud there, so you want to find the one that will actually allow you to push back on it. So about 5 inches in from each edge, just depress that spring clip while lifting up on the top, and then just hold it up. Do the same on the opposite side. Once we've released those 2 clips, we can then tilt that top up. Now we'll need a method to support that top from falling forward or tilting too far back. So if you don't have somebody to help you, make up some type of a support, either a piece of heavy cord, a light chain, or a heavy wire that will allow that top to tilt just slightly back from 90 degrees, but be stable. We've chosen a piece of heavy gauge wire. We'll hook one end of it through a small hole in the top of the cabinet, and then the opposite end through a hole in the main top. And just make sure that it is good and stable. Now next we'll need to remove 2 screws that secure that front panel to the cabinet, and as well as we tilt that front panel forward, we'll need to either remove wires to the door switch or remove the door switch from the front panel. So next I'm going to just tuck that harness away from the restrainer. Just pull that loose. And then I'll remove the 2 screws for the front panel, one on either side. Now as I tilt that front panel forward, that gives me good access to that switch where I can either pull those wires away from the switch, or I can just release this clip and pop the switch right out of the front panel. So I'll just release those spring clips while twisting that switch body slightly. And pull it out through the opening, and just lay that over the side of the cabinet. Now once we've done that, we can tilt that front panel forward enough. We're going to lift it off of the 2 hooks on the bottom of the cabinet. And then set it aside. Now next we need to get that drum out of there, so we'll need to release the tension of the belt. And it's wrapped around both the motor pulley and the idler pulley. We'll use both hands, one in through on the right hand side of the blower, one through the center, and then we'll release the tension on the idler, lift the belt off of the motor, and then we can take the drum out. So we're going to reach one hand in on the right hand side, another one in through the center. Once you've located the belt and the idler, we're simply going to push that idler towards the cabinet on the right. Release the belt from the motor pulley, break it away from the idler pulley, and then just gently allow that idler pulley to drop back down into place, and your belt is free. And we'll use that belt to support that drum and lift it off of the rear drum rollers. So just wiggle that belt closer to the back and lift up on it. We're basically lifting this channel at the back of the drum away from those rear drum rollers. Then we'll just set that aside. Now to remove that drum roller, we'll need a flat blade screwdriver to remove the clip that secures the roller to the shaft. Just into that gap and gently pry that clip away. Now beneath that E-clip, there's also a very thin thrust washer. We need to make sure that we secure that. We can slide the old roller off and discard it. But typically you would be replacing both rollers at the same time. Now before installing your new rollers, you may want to add a little bit of high temperature or light grade machine oil, just a few drops on each of those shafts, and also make sure that that shaft is not worn, and if it is, you'll need to replace it as well. Now there is a front and back to those drum support rollers. The front edge is slightly rounded to fit into the odor drum. Just simply slide it onto the shaft. Remember to reinstall that thrust washer. And then you'll need to take a pair of pliers to install that E-ring. So just line the E-ring up with the slot on that shaft. Just hold it in position, take your pliers, and squeeze it onto the shaft. And again, you'll be typically replacing both drum support rollers at the same time, so just do the same procedure for the opposite side. And now we're ready to put the drum back in place. Now when installing the drum, we want to make sure that we get the rear lip of that drum over those rear rollers. So I find it easier to position the belt just slightly towards the back. Fit it through that opening. Then using that belt to support the weight of the drum, keep a little backward pressure on it until it engages both of those drum rollers. And then slide the belt to where the marks were on it. That will line it up with the idler pulley on the motor, and then we'll wrap it around those. So using two hands, one on either side of the blower housing, reach in, grasp that belt, and lay it across the top of the idler pulley. Push the idler pulley completely towards the right side. Let it wrap, that belt wrap around the motor pulley. Make sure it sits fully into the grooves, and then it's centered on the idler itself. We have tension on it, and then we can just rotate that drum a couple of turns, make sure that our blower wheel is turning freely. You can also do a quick visual inspection at the back, make sure that the drum is pressed tight up against that rear felt. That would indicate that we're sitting down on both of those drum rollers. It should be a tight fit all the way around. And now we're ready to put the front panel on. Now when installing the front panel, we want to make sure that we line up those two slotted openings on the bottom lip of that panel with the two clips across the base. As well, you'll note that there are some locating pins on either side of the cabinet. There should be a plastic insert on each of those. So if they're not both there, you may have dropped one when you pulled the front panel off. So locate those, and they'll line up with the two openings midway down that front panel. Now we'll tilt that panel up into position. At this point, we'll take that switch and we're going to fit it into that mounting clip on the front panel. You want to open the door to make sure that we line that up properly. Just spread that clip slightly, push the button of the switch through the opening, and then make sure that that clip grasps both sides of the switch. And then close the door up. Line up those locating pins on both sides. And the front panel should rest up against the edge of the cabinet. We'll then put the retaining screws in place. Now next, we'll need to make sure that we take that wire harness to the switch and engage it with that retaining clip on the top of the front panel. Make sure that's engaged properly there so that the wires don't come in contact with the drum. Next, we'll remove our support rod. Then we'll lower that front panel down. Again, there are a couple of locating pins on the top of that front panel that line up with these two holes. Make sure those both line up. Press the top down, the spring clips will engage, and then push the dryer back into position. Now we're ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete.